before I get started, can I just, so I know where everyone's coming from, how many people here are family members? So how many people here have got a young person with, hello, and how many people are professionals who work with PBS or some capacity? So that's the majority, okay. It's useful to know. Anybody who doesn't fit into those two groups? Fair enough. Okay. So today, when I was asked to do this talk, I was given a really, really broad brief. I was just told, talk about a family perspective, PBS and a family perspective. So I just thought, okay, well, how long have you got? How long do I have to talk to for? Because I can talk about this for days. So I kind of narrowed it down a little bit. As I said a minute ago, I'm here with my family head on and my parent head on rather than my professional head on. But I will talk a little bit about my background as well, so you kind of know where I am and what I've been doing and what my life's been like for my son. I'm also going to talk a little bit about what families in general might experience working with PBS, having people with disabilities. It has been a real challenge to sort of separate out just the PBS element from people with just raising people with disabilities. So forgive me if I kind of go a little bit off track and talk generally about raising children to adults with disabilities, but it was a little difficult to break it up. I'm also going to talk, because I'm glad there's so many people who are involved working with PBS, because we talk a little bit about possible pitfalls when working with families. Now, this is where I've got both hats on, because I can talk about it from both sides, what it's like when I work and also what it's like when I'm a parent not working. And then I'm going to talk specifically about issues working with adults, because I talk a lot about raising a child. So there are things that are particular to working with adults. And then a few top tips, and I hope you'll forgive me, it's not in any way meant to sound patronising. There's going to be a lot of stuff you go, I knew that already. But hopefully everybody will get a little something out of this conversation, this chat that you can go away with. And then if there's enough time, hopefully there will be, I won't be talking that long. We can have questions, comments. If there's something you desperately need to ask me about in the middle, please do just yell out and ask the question, because you'll have forgotten it by the end. So, I've also got to apologise for the very wordy charts, but I did try and do really short bullets, and I completely forgot what it was that I was supposed to be talking about. So I put quite wordy charts up, but and I'll talk around them. So my son is Connor, he's 21, and he was born in December '95, a couple of days before Christmas, which I hope you'll never forget them before. And we had a lovely first few months, first year or so, no problems. He was a great sleeper, great eater, happy chap. And then about 20 months, I felt that something wasn't right. Connor's my first child, but I have been around children a lot up until that point, and I just felt something wasn't right. He wasn't babbling, the speech wasn't right, and I just had an instinct about it. And being a new mother, very sort of conscientious, I was going to my health visitor very regularly for checkups like you're supposed to, and I mentioned it to the health visitor, something's not right. And the first thing she did was said, oh well, the doctors won't even look at problems until he's 2. So that was my first mistake. I listened to her. And I didn't do anything about it. And I just sat there and I thought, oh, it's just me, I'm a new mother, and I'm worried about nothing. By the time he got to 2 years old, I knew it wasn't just about being a new mother, and that it wasn't just me. And it was literally turned 2 and I got on the phone. It's like, there's something wrong with my son, and I need to see somebody. So we saw the GP, saw the doctors, and they said to me, well, we're not going to do anything because it could be his hearing. Maybe he's deaf, that's why the language isn't coming. I'm like, he's not deaf. I know he's not deaf, I'm his mother. But they're like, no, he must have a hearing test. So off we went for a hearing test, which of course took 2 months to get the appointment. Came through the hearing test with flying colours. It's not his hearing, and I knew that. So then we were referred to the Child Development Centre to see the paediatrician. This took another couple of months. So it was April by the time we saw the paediatrician. When we went to that meeting, that first appointment with the paediatrician, by that point I'd had several months to talk to other people about their kids. I was fortunate enough that I knew a family who had recently had the child who had a diagnosis, and they'd actually just started an ABA home programme. And I talked to them and I was asking, what did you see? What was it that first, made you worried? What sort of things you see? And they started recounting their stories, and there was alarm bell, alarm bell, alarm bell. It was all stuff that was going on in my house and my son. So by the time I got to that point, when my son was 2 years and 4 months, I already knew it was autism. I knew it. And all I needed was someone to confirm it. And I think if I hadn't have said at the time to the paediatrician, is it autism? And that's exactly how I said it, is it autism? She wouldn't have given me the diagnosis there. I'd have waited another 6 months for the next appointment. And to be fair, we had a fantastic paediatrician. She was marvellous, very, very supportive. So this is not a criticism of her. This is just how it is. So because I pushed the point, we got that diagnosis at 2 years and 4 months. And which is very early for people, for families with autism. And I remember going out with my son out of this appointment, and I went to my car in the car park, put my son in the car seat, and I burst into tears because I'd had it confirmed, my worst fear. And I got on the phone to my now ex-husband and told him what had happened, what the diagnosis was. And he didn't get it. My ex-husband hadn't had the exposure that I'd had, which I'll talk about in a minute, to disability. So he didn't know what that diagnosis meant. He didn't know what was coming. And actually I didn't know what was coming, I just had a better idea than he did. And he said, all the nice things, well, we'll love him, no matter what, and it'll be fine, and we'll manage. And I got really angry with him. So it's just like, you don't get it. You don't get it. You don't get what's coming. So I allowed myself that afternoon to cry about it. And it's part of my personality that I'm a bit of a problem solver, and that's the way I tackle things. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this is the right way to go about things, because you should take that element of time to grieve when you get diagnoses like this. I didn't. I was just like, right, that's it. Okay, what are we going to do now? Got the diagnosis. So straight onto the computer, into books, loads of books, reading everything I could about autism. Did my research. And during that time, I'm going to talk a little bit about therapies in a second, but ABA was my decision after reading about all the therapies. And we were very fortunate at that point to find out about a research programme that was about to start. And it was replicating the original studies done by Ivor Lovaas. And there were replication sites in various places in this country and in America. And there was one starting. There was one programme starting, one replication site starting. And I heard about this and I was like, I'd already decided an ABA home programme was the way we were going to go. But getting onto this programme meant that it was going to be an all-encompassing programme. It was going to give me access to clinician, access to tutors. It was going to make it so much easier. And so we applied for a place and went for the assessment. And I was told that my son needed an IQ measurement of 35 to get onto this programme. My first reaction was, oh, that's fine, he's a smart little cookie. But what you don't realise is how hard it is to measure IQ for a 2-year-old with autism. And I still remember to this day getting a phone call from the organisation to say that his IQ had been measured at 35. So he had literally got onto this research programme by the skin of his teeth. It was the happiest day. So the next thing, once that happened, the next question was, how are we going to pay for this? Because it wasn't funded, and we knew we wouldn't get funding because there was no reason for a local authority to fund a place on a research programme. And bearing in mind at the time this was, the 90s, ABA was not a popular approach. By the way, I use ABA, for the purposes of this presentation, you can substitute PBS every time I say ABA. In this context, it's exactly the same thing. So, how do we pay for it? That's a good question. In today's money, it was £35,000 for 1 year to be on this research programme. Obviously you can do home programmes for cheaper than that, but because this was an entire package, it was £35,000. So So I second mortgaged the house to pay for it. And it was a really big risk because we knew we'd only get a year. And at the end of that year, we were either going to have to raise more money to pay for them to stay on this programme, or we were going to have to get funding from the local authority. By the way, I'm still paying off that mortgage, just so you know. So we started the home programme. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then when he was 10, because life wasn't already complicated enough, he developed epilepsy, which is quite common with young people with autism. They don't tell you that, by the way, when you get the diagnosis of autism. It's quite common. You find that out after. So he started having seizures, and we then had that diagnosis and that issue to deal with as well. When he was 6, so we were doing the home programme for 4 years. And when he was 6, he started attending the Jigsaw Cabas School, which is an ABA school in Surrey. And when he turned 19, he started attending Jigsaw Plus, which is another part of the same trust, which is a service for adults with autism that has a very strong behavioural approach. We'll go into a few of these things in more detail in a minute. So, oh sorry, this is my son, just so you got a picture of him in his various ages. He's now 21, as I said. So that's my boy. So just a little bit about me and my background. I referred before about my experience with disabilities. My parents are very active in the community and did a lot of work with people with disabilities. So I actually learned to swim at a swimming club for people with disabilities because my mum thought it was really good to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So my 3 brothers and I, we all learned to swim at this club, and one of my fondest memories of that is swimming my first width of Belsize Park swimming pool in London with a lady called Pauline who had cerebral palsy at the other end cheering me on. And I still remember that. So it was natural that I would actually start working there as well. It was a real pleasure to do it. I used to work mostly with the children, but funnily enough, that was actually my first exposure to autism when I was about 15. It was one of the children that I took had autism. So my son was born in 95. We did the autism research, and I just want to talk a little bit about that because when you first get this diagnosis, it's not like they sort of then give you all the information you need of how to cope with everything. What they do is if you're lucky, here's a leaflet, you know, or here's someone you can talk to, and off you go. And we'll see you in 6 months for your next appointment. And that's kind of how it goes. I was very fortunate in that I had an education and I had resources and I know how to find out information. I know who to ask, and a lot of people don't, and I can't imagine being in that situation where you don't have those tools at your disposal to go out and learn more about the disability that your son has and what's out there. And there's no established routine. It's not like you're diagnosed with a medical condition and okay, you've got this and this is the treatment. With autism, it's just like, you've got this and there's no cure. It's pretty much what you get told. Oh, right. So just move forwards on that. This was these were all the therapies and interventions, or some of them, that I was looking at when I was trying to decide what to do next. I can absolutely say that there's a couple on there that I looked at them for 5 seconds, and that was about all the research I did. And there were others I looked into, more closely. Actually, the big ABA in the middle is most important. And the reason why ABA for me was the most important, was the one I picked, was because it was the only one that had research to back it up in terms of results. It was the one that had the most common sense approach. It was logical. To me, that meant a lot. I could understand what the process was, how it was going to work. And quite an important one for me, it didn't have that sort of touchy-feely, lovely, everything's going to be fine, and son's going to be all right. And there's a lot of treatments out there that are very much directed towards the parent rather than the child. I think also there was a lot of stuff that was quite honest about how tough it was, that it was going to be hard on parents, and that appeals to me, that sort of honest approach. Just going back again. So for those 4 years that Con was at home, I was looking after his home programme, and we was running our home business that we had at the time. So again, I was fortunate that I could be at home with my son, which so many parents can't be, so that I could be involved in this home programme. So I had all the training, the same training as the tutors had in ABA, so I could deliver the training the same way. Now it was a 40-hour-a-week intensive early intervention. So that meant 6 hours a day, Monday to Saturday, 3 hours on Sundays. So we had tutors in and out of the house every day of the week. It was quite an intense process. About 2 years into the programme, the sponsor of the research withdrew their support, which sent most of the parents whose children were on the programme into a complete and utter meltdown. As a consequence of that, partly for completely selfish reasons, which is that we wanted our children to carry on this programme, but for also some altruistic reasons that this research was important, we founded this charity search to try and support this research programme to continue. And it worked. We helped out, a new company was formed, which is UK Yap, and is now still running and doing very well, I understand. And they deliver ABA programmes in the same way to families, the same way as we received. When my son went to school, I was in the financial situation of nearly losing my house because I hadn't been earning and money was coming in. By this time my husband and I had split up, and I had to go back to work. So my son went off to school and I went to work, and someone said over lunch that it's amazing how many parents work in social care. This is kind of how it happens, you kind of get sucked into it. I ended up working at West Middlesex College, which is an independent specialist college for adults with Asperger's syndrome. And I started working there, and cut a very long story short, I ended up as the college manager. So I was responsible for everything on the non-academic side. I went from there to Jigsaw Plus, which is part of the trust that ran the school that my son went to, obviously a connection there. They were looking to develop their post-16 curriculum, their post-19 curriculum, and develop an adult service. So I went on and did that. So developed Jigsaw Plus adult service, and because I'm some kind of really weird masochist, I thought that would be a good time to do a degree. So I did a degree in health and social care at the same time, and as to this day I don't quite actually know how I got through those few years, but I did. And that leads me to now, and currently the registered locality manager at Priory Adult Care, and I'm developing supported living services for adults with disabilities. Sorry, that was really long-winded background, but that's where I come from. So going back to talking about my son and me and our particular challenges, working the ABA programme and with his disabilities. These top ones are mostly my son's delightful behaviours and needs. So non-compliance is pretty much always at the top of the list anyway for everybody, but I don't need to explain that one. Fecal smearing, if you haven't experienced it, it is without question the worst, most soul-destroying behaviour that I think that anyone can exhibit. And it was horrible. So fecal smearing, for those who don't know, is exactly what it sounds like, which is having a child having a poo, and then smearing it over everything. Themselves, furniture, the walls, the floors, the whole lot. So we all laugh a little bit about poo and stuff, but when you've spent the 30th, 40th, 50th day in a row trying to clean poo off, doing laundry, trying to wipe down your walls, you just lose it. It's painful. And you're running into that point then where your house permanently smells, it's permanently dirty, there's no point in replacing things, because why? Why would you? Horrible, horrible, horrible behaviour. Pretty close to that one is self-injurious behaviour. So my son's behaviour of preference is that he hand bites, which is this, and he does it as a sensory thing. He does it in levels of high sort of excitement, but also frustration and anger. So pretty much any reason. He also had a short spell of hitting his own head. And I wanted to talk about this particularly because when we were running the home programme, these behaviours were developing. And they're both at the same sort of bracket, same category. But what happened was that when he started to bang his head with his hands, which is horrific when you see it for the first time, because we were on this home program, on this research program, there was somebody there all the time, ABA people, always trained. It was jumped on so fast, this behaviour. It just wasn't allowed to develop. It was replaced immediately with other behaviours. So there were interventions put in place the second it started, and it was such a key thing. And often what happens is that these little behaviours pick up, and you barely notice, and the child's developing a little thing, and you're well into it before you even realise that it started. And you see that more, I think, with things like routine and sort of, particularly routine, I think, having to do things a certain way, and you're involved before you realise that you've been doing it for months actually, before you spot it. But what I found with working with ABA people, ABA trained people, is they see it straight away when it starts happening, and they can do something about it. There's no guarantee it's going to work, but they can put something in place, they can try. So the head banging we got rid of, which was fantastic, and touch wood, we won't see that one again. Hand biting has stayed with him. It's an established behaviour for him. It's never going to go away, I don't believe. However, again with the ABA intervention, he went from hand bites of, I think 20 to 30 times a day was his peak in how many times he was doing it every day, to now it's maybe once a week. Huge difference. Huge difference. So other ones, very much related to autism and learning disability, oblivion to danger, don't understand, roads, hot things, you name it. The requirement for routine was a big one. So we'd be driving along, I'd take a different route, and I'd suddenly have a meltdown in the back of the car. Well, not me, I might have a meltdown in the car, but my son would have a big one. Repetitive behaviour, constantly needing to do things over and over and over again. Sensory issues. And he still finds it very difficult, certain noises, not so much volume but pitch. It's very difficult for him. So you can have a fire engine going past, doesn't bother him, but rustle a crisp packet and he's just like, whoa. And then the lovely food issues. I'll give you an example, my son wouldn't eat hot food for a year. Things like that. So textures and temperatures and so on. So he's a very limited diet even now, and we're still working on expanding the repertoire of food that he'll eat. You have to be in this for the long haul. That's definitely one of the lessons. So things that affected me more, my challenges, that as I've touched on before, ABA dominated in my house. So 7 days a week, there's people trooping in and out. And don't think for a second they weren't welcome. I was literally welcome out, please, come in, cookies, tea, you can have whatever you want, thank you for working for my son. But at the same time, there's no privacy, 7 days a week for 4 years. It's amazing. And also, you start in a nice tidy corner of your house with your ABA programme. You've got a couple of resources, you're only running 6 programmes, and it's all quite neat and tidy. And then, the second you start to generalise, so you're trying to teach something in different places, and that's it, your house is gone. So, okay, well, we've taught it to him in the bedroom now, we need to teach it to him in the kitchen. Okay. We had, at one point, I think, sort of into the 3rd or 4th year, we had labels, with labels stuck to everything in the house. Table, chair, washing machine, little laminated labels with Velcro on the back. If you stood still long enough, you'd get a label stuck to you, I'm telling you. Everywhere. Because we were trying to teach him, words, matching the words. And so he'd be trotting around going, where the hell's the washing machine? So your house, it just stops being a house and a home and starts being a teaching setting. And we had things like, we started off in his room, and over the course of the 4 years, so my husband and I split up. So I ended up in the box room in the house. Connor ended up in the master bedroom. It's amazing how that happens. The other bedroom in the house was a teaching room. Even the bathroom, we'd cut out a piece of hardboard to put over the bath, so that if he did any programmes that involved glue, glitter, paint, or anything messy, water, could all be done in the bathroom. We had like this worktop. So yes, the bathrooms always had interesting shades of something on the walls. And then it just came downstairs, and eventually that was it. That was the whole house. Property damage was an interesting one. As I was saying with the smearing, it wasn't just the smearing, it was everything else. It was the knocking over of drinks and foods and just generally tipping your paint out on the floor or whatever. And I remember just before we sold the house, that was the time I finally replaced the carpet. And I actually went out for the day, so I can't be there when you pull that carpet up because I don't want to see what's underneath it, or I would just be too embarrassed. But there was just no point in replacing it. The number of beds we went through. My son liked to bounce on the bed, and we tried every single bed you could possibly imagine. We had metal ones, we had divans. In the end, the longest lasting one, just for the record, is we bought one that was designed for student dorms. Amazing how that one was the strongest, lasted the longest. Matches it. And these are the sort of costs that pile up that people don't actually think about when you have a child with a disability. Hyperactivity and sleeplessness. My son, actually, generally speaking, wasn't that hyperactive, and if you saw him now, you would never believe in a million years he was hyperactive, because his favourite place is bed. But he went through these phases, particularly in the summer, when it was light, couldn't cope with the longer days, and he would just wind himself up. By 11 o'clock he was bouncing off every wall in the house. And it got so bad that I was just getting no sleep at all. And eventually the paediatrician said, this is ridiculous, you need to give him something to help him sleep, otherwise you're both going to collapse. So she ended up giving him something. It was just as an antihistamine, to cause him to be drowsy. But I felt so bad about medicating my son to make him sleep. It was just this horrible feeling. I couldn't give it to him. And I would wait until it got to night 4, and I was literally pulling hair out, and I just thought I had to sleep. And I would finally give him some medication because I was just so desperate. And then we would repeat the process. Eventually I had a friend of mine, he designed some wooden shutters for his bedroom, my son's bedroom, that slid and they could lock, and it made the room pitch black. And it was just one of the best things I ever did. Simple remedy, but it's not always something you think of. Breakdown of relationships, that was a big one. Obviously my marriage broke down, and in all honesty I wouldn't say necessarily it broke down because of this scenario. In fact, I was completely honest, I said it possibly helped us stay together for longer, actually, because we were kind of like so oblivious to each other that, but it did break down eventually. But I also lost all my friends in that period of time, all of them. So, and it wasn't their fault, wasn't. I can look back on it now and just, at the time I found it very difficult, but now I can look back at it sort of more clinically and just say, well, actually, it's partly yours as well, it wasn't just them. But this thing of not wanting to invite people to your house because it smells or it's dirty, not being able to take your child to someone else's house because you're afraid they're going to break something or, cause a riot, it's not good. And you have to sit and listen to your friends talk about their child's milestones as you went and be happy for them. And they will be happy for your milestones, but not in the same way, because they won't get it. They won't get what that milestone means and how hard you have to work for it. And then of course everyone's favourite, the health issues that come as a result of all this other stuff that I'm talking about. So the pros and cons of ABA at home, again, substitute PBS for that. And what you'll see in this list is that the same things, a couple of the same things on both sides. So the first one, people in your house all the time, definitely a pro, definitely a con. The day, and any parent who's run an ABA home programme will know that feeling when a tutor rings in and says, I'm sorry, I'm sick. And you're just like, no, you can't be sick. Who's going to look after my son? Who's going to work with him? And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna. That's all I'm going to do. So you love these people. You love them for coming into your house and working with your child and being hit and weed on and all those other things that happen to them. But at the same time, there are days when you just think, I just want to be in my house by myself with nobody else here. It can be simple, straightforward, common sense. That's what I think. But it could also be complicated, full of jargon and hard to understand. It is difficult, it can be difficult. And this is where I think PBS practitioners can really come into play by making it accessible to people. A lot of practitioners have an awful lot of training, an awful lot of academic training, and these words and these terms are all in their heads. You've got to find a way of communicating it in a way that's accessible to people. the pro is progress, of course it's the pro. It's the thing you do it for, progress for your child. But it's not a cure, and there are no guarantees. The guideline, structure, routine, agreed common goals and plan, that one definitely appeals to me because I'm sure I'm a little OCD and I like to have that structure, that routine. It really helped me. I think particularly when you've come from that diagnosis and that minefield of, oh my God, you know, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Where do I go next? Am I doing the right thing? And suddenly you've got people going, right, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to measure it this way, and if that doesn't work, we're going to do this. And suddenly it's like, oh, okay, it's all going to be okay. But there's a lot of trial and error with no quick fixes or easy options. So it's just like, well, we'll try that, but it might not work, and then we'll have to try something else. Being around people who understand, this is a huge one. I'll give you a best example I have of this. Early in the programme, one of the things my son had, one program he had, was verbal imitation. So basically, I do this, and you do this back. That's all it is. My son couldn't get it. My son is still almost non-verbal. He really struggled, and he just couldn't get this. We tried all sorts of things. The program had been running for several months. And then one day, he was getting a reinforcer, and the reinforcer happened to be sort of tickling and playing with him, you know, sort of rough play with him, emphasizing. And I got in his face, and I just went, pah, in his face, just blew in his face. And he just went, pah, back again. And I remember just like, oh my God. And the tutor was there. I was just like, I looked at the tutor's looking at me, and like, we're both thinking the same thing. Did he do it or didn't he? Was it just coincidence? We don't know. Do it again. So did it again. Got a copy back. It's a tiny little. I'm like, oh my God, my son did a verbal imitation. And I just remember, it's ridiculous now when I think back about it. But we were dancing round the room, squeaking, you know. My son did a verbal imitation. Then we rang everybody. So we rang the team, like everyone on the team. Colin did a verbal imitation. He went pah. We rang the office where the senior tutor was and our supervisor, and we could hear the senior tutor going, guess what? Colin did a pah. And to be around people who get how momentous that was, it was huge. It was huge. Now, if I say that to my friends, I thought, oh God, this happened and it's fantastic and amazing. They're like, oh, that's really great. And it's not that they're not happy for us, but they just don't understand. So being around those ABA tutors, as I say, your supervisor, your clinicians, and they are there with you on this journey, is so important. But the downside of that is that program intensity causes that isolation, and you lose the friends who can't be part of that process. It teaches parents carers as much as the children. I think this is definitely true. It teaches you how to manage yourself. It teaches you the strategies that you can then put into place yourself without necessarily needing a supervisor or a senior tutor after you've been doing it long enough. A good example of this is there was a time my son was having an issue with food, another food issue. This was well into the programme, and I rang up the senior tutor. I was like, oh, Connor's doing this now, and you know, what should I do? And there was this silence on the end of the phone, and she just went, you know perfectly well what to do. You know what to do. And I'm like, yes, but it's going to be hard and it's going to take ages, and I want you to give me a quicker alternative. Magic me up another way of doing this. And he's just like, no, it doesn't work that way, and you know it. I was like, yeah, okay. A year later, we sorted the problem. It takes time, commitment, focus and drive. Certainly if you're running an intensive home programme, and it's not to say it isn't worth it every second. I don't begrudge any second of it. But it's exhausting. And you have to be on it all the time, and it has to be in the forefront of your mind all the time with your child. You can't let things slip. You can't just sort of take the easy option. You do sometimes because you're a parent and you're not a miracle worker, but you then regret having done it. So it's really difficult. And lastly, a good programme introduced at the right time has the potential to save huge sums, and I absolutely believe this is true. Particularly with early intervention with children. Introduce it at the right time, give them the best chance they've got. Do it when they're most malleable and they're most open to what you can teach them. You're dealing with a 3, 4, 5-year-old, you're going to have so much more chance of success than if you're dealing with a 25-year-old, 26-year-old. It's not to say it won't work, but it is a different experience. Trying to convince local authorities to fund these sorts of programs, which, as we've said, are cheap, it's very hard to make a good argument. It really is, because you can't prove what would have happened if someone had taken another route. So it's very difficult to evidence how successful these are in preventing problems further down the line. Always a difficulty. And so this is going to seem like you just probably want to go and top yourselves after this list, because it's a list of all things horrible. But I really wanted to get this across to people who work with families currently, who do PBS currently, because I know from the professional point of view, sometimes I'm working with a family and I think, oh, for God's sake, you know, why can't you just do this the way I want you to do this? You know, it's not that difficult. You need to know what it is that they've been through, what their background has been, how much they've been through before they got to the point with you. And this is particularly true of adults. If you're working with adults in supported living or in residential accommodation or in whatever setting you're working in, you have to think about what parents and family have been through prior to that point. It's really important. The Director of Education at Jigsaw said to me once, she said, I never understand why parents could do what I said when I said put this program in place. I couldn't understand it. And then I had twins. And she completely got why parents struggled then. But you don't always have that perspective. So quite a few of these we've talked about already. Gradual destruction of your home and possessions. And I know it's very strong, but it is really true. That's what it is like. My son went through a phase of wanting you to cut anything that looked like a belt, or it looked like a snake, like a cable, anything that was kind of long and thin. He would come up to you with this thing and he'd go, cut, and he'd want you to cut the end. We had no belts, no one had any belts in the house because he wanted the ends cut off them. So yeah, so along with that, and then being able to find shoes, I think was you know, the norm. Deterioration or loss of relationships, marriage, family, friends. This is what we haven't talked about, the battling for benefits, resources, support and education. That just never goes away. It's the gift that keeps on giving. When I first did Connor's DLA form, which is now PIP, but when I did his first DLA form, he got rejected. He wasn't disabled enough for DLA. This is my son who, severely autistic, severe learning disability, epilepsy, wasn't disabled enough for benefits. And of course I appealed it, but I wondered how many times they've rejected an application and the family hasn't appealed it because they don't know that you can, or they don't know how. You know, it's really heartbreaking. So that's when it starts, right at the beginning. You know, you apply for your DLA and it just goes on. Then you're fighting over the school they go to and the statement, what's on it. For me, it was the fight for ABA. I want him to continue ABA. It's been really successful for 4 years. I want him to go to an ABA school. So he needs to have this input. So then you have the fight over ABA getting put onto the statement, because if you don't get it put on the statement, you can lose it at any point. It is just frightening. And I ended up talking to a legal advisor about the statementing process, who was a specialist in fighting cases of basically people who are trying to fight for ABA. So I spoke to him before, so I knew how to handle the situation with the statement, not to accept it until I was happy with it. And it just goes on and on. So then you have the fight to get them into the school, then you have the fight to keep them in the school at 11, and then you have the fight at 16, and then you have the fight at 19 for what happens to them next. Where do they go? Do they go to college or a day service or what? So it goes on and on. And then they change it and they say, okay, we're not going to have DLA anymore, we're going to have PIP, and you have to go through the whole process again. So always got to do that. The ill health we've talked about, you know, is a constant thing. This is what we have, in continued exposure to seeing the pain and suffering of a loved one. It's sometimes one that gets kind of slipped and forgotten about, really. It is extremely hard to convey what it's like watching your child in pain. It may not be physical pain, but they're suffering. You know, even if it's the suffering because they don't understand that you can't follow their routine, or they don't understand what's going on, or whatever it is. See your child suffering and not to be able to explain to them what's happening is awful. And I'll give you an example of how bad that could get. It's quite a painful one. Sometime after Connor had been doing the home programme, we went for our usual paediatrician's appointment, and she said to me, oh, I've had some other children being diagnosed and the parents are struggling, would you mind if I gave them your number so that they could talk to another parent? I was like, absolutely fine, no, please do, because I had somebody, and you always have someone to talk to. So she gave me, my number out, and these parents contacted, and one of them just wanted to come have a chat, wanted to see the home programme being run, see how it worked and all the rest of it. The second one that came, when she turned up, I knew how bad things were. You can just tell when you look at someone. She was falling apart at the seams, there was no question about it. And she came into my kitchen, and I didn't even bother sort of suggesting go and look at the home programme. I just thought, you just need to have a chat. We sat down, we had a cup of tea, and she talked about her son. And her son was older, I think he was about 8 or 9, autistic, very severe learning disability, very, very serious challenging behaviour. He was assaultive, and worse than that, he was unhappy all the time. All the time he was unhappy, crying, upset, frustrated, angry. And she said to me, what's going to happen to him when I'm not here? She said, even I struggle to manage him, and I love him, he's my son, I would do anything for him. How can no one else is going to love him like I do? And then there was a silence, and she whispered at this point, she said, sometimes I think about killing him. And I'd want to say like I was outraged and it was appalling and how dreadful, but actually I knew exactly what she was talking about. I knew exactly how she felt. I knew what that felt like. To feel like your son would be better off dead than left to a system that might not care for him. And honestly, it stuck with me. It breaks my heart when I think about it. It really does. And I often think about this woman and where her son is and how they're doing. Because it was just, if you'd seen her say this look of horrible guilt, but I'm just glad I was there and she could say it out loud and without judgment, because it was awful. It was awful. And at that point I was counting my blessings, because I was looking at my son, saying no matter how bad things are with my son, he's happy, he's chuckly, you can see from the photos, always smiling. And I just thought, oh my God, no matter how bad things get for me, I haven't got it as bad as that poor woman. So going back to the jealousy, seeing others raising their children, so we talked about that a little bit, about, and again, it's not about resenting someone else's, typical child, but it's not having it reciprocated in quite the same way. And the problem is when they start, the gap is very small. Of course, as they get older, the gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's more and more noticeable. At 5 and 6, they can sometimes still manage to play with their peers. They can't do it at 16. Fear of mistakes of the future, and going back to this lady, this fear that she had of what was going to happen. Being constantly fit up and again running a home programme, it makes it even worse, because you're constantly thinking, oh my God, we haven't got much time, we've just got to get these programmes in and we've got to do it right, and we can't afford to waste time doing the wrong thing, and what if I've made a mistake? I never thought that about ABA, funnily enough. I never thought that I was doing the wrong thing with ABA. It's one of the few things, the rock solid in the choice that I've made. But the minutiae of the decisions definitely thought that. And now I think, oh, I wonder if I could have done more on that. Should I have looked at something else or another therapy? I never tried B12 therapy with my son. Should I have done that? It's those sorts of things. And eventually you just have to block it out. You don't know what you think about it anymore. So all these last sort of, helplessness, rage, frustration, guilt, is this my fault? My first paediatrician's appointment when we got the diagnosis, one of the first things out of the paediatrician's mouth was, it's not your fault. And it's like, it never occurred to me until she said that. But I think this is a leftover from sort of the Canna Bettelheim refrigerator mother theories that, and they're prevalent in the 50s and 60s. There is still a residual thing, and there was back in the 90s. And so I think she was sort of keen that I may possibly have heard something about, it's the mother's fault. But yeah, after she said that, I was just like, oh God, maybe I should have picked him up more in the hospital when he was born. Strangest things go through your head. And the loss of identity, it's not a funny one. I think all parents, particularly mums, get that loss of identity when they stop being, themselves and just stop being mum. But I think it's 10 times worse when you've got a child with additional needs. because you go to endless reviews and meetings and you get called mum by complete strangers. It's one of my pet peeves. I hate it. I hate it when someone is sitting there who's might be the same age as me. And they go, "What do you think, mum?" And I just want to go, "I'm not your mother. I've got a name." You know, and I get some cases, sometimes it's appropriate, you know, if the young person is there and that's how they recognise you, and so I get it. But don't do that unless you absolutely have to, because it's really annoying. Which annoys me anyway. Having to be an expert in child disability therapies and interventions, so I talked about research, and that, again, it never stops. You read about autism, you read about ABA, you read about therapies. I've reached the point now where somebody will say, "Oh, there's a documentary on tomorrow night about autism." Or, "Did you see that film about it?" I'm never watching another documentary about autism if I can possibly avoid it. And I know I should, from a professional point of view, I should. But it's just like saturation. I'm saturation now. I can't do it. I will read stuff because I absolutely have to, because it's part of my work, but I will not choose to necessarily go and watch it. Movies is particularly bad. You know, I watched Rain Man. I thought it was fantastic. But I can't, that's kind of where I draw the line. I just can't watch any more movies about autistic children. Pressure of doing a good job, not being sick. Oh, this is a big one if you're trying to work. It's not just about not being sick, but it's also about the things that your child requires of you. And I still have that now. My son lives at home. He did it today. It was just like, timing is fantastic. It was almost like he was saying to me, "You know, I'm going to give that talk about what it's like to be a parent and what it's like having a family, you know, with a child with a disability and all that. I'm going to give you a really good example to talk about when you get there." So because this morning I'm just like, okay, I've got a big day. My first thought is the seizure prayer, which I say every day. I have serious appointments that I can't miss, which is, "Please don't have a seizure today. Please don't have a seizure today. Please don't have a seizure today," because that will dominate the day, which is incredibly mean. So did the seizure prayer, so he didn't have a seizure, brilliant. What did he do? Smeared poo all over his bed this morning. So what I got to do while I was trying to get stuff ready for coming here and all the rest of it was, "Oh my God, did you have to do this today? Get in the shower, wash him down, put the laundry on, you know, clean the bed on." And he hasn't done it for ages, but it's like, today you have to. Couldn't wait till your father was looking after you. But yeah, not being sick, having to sort of suddenly phone up work and say, "I'm really sorry, I can't come in again," because my son's had a seizure. And most places are very tolerant up to a point, and then all of a sudden they start, "Again?" You know, really difficult. The nice thing when I was working about Jigsaw was I never had to explain it, because Jigsaw was practically run by people who all had autistic children. So they were all like, "Yeah, okay, we understand. You can work from home today." Financial issues, I talked about how much it costs to run that programme, and it is, again, repairing your property and doing the resources and every other thing, loss of work, loss of income. Downplay of needs. This is a common one by people who mean well. So they'll say to you things like, "Oh, at least he's healthy. At least he doesn't do this, you know. At least he doesn't assault people." Yeah, great. But it kind of downplays all the other stuff that you know is hard and difficult. So it kind of like, well, that makes up for it. Well, and actually, no, it really doesn't. Nothing will make up for it. So be careful with terminology like that. At least he's this, at least he's that. Not having someone to talk to understand what it's like. We talked about it. Being seen as superhuman. This is one of my favourite ones of mine, because I heard it a lot. But people just said, "Oh God, you're so amazing. I couldn't do what you do. I couldn't have done what you've done. You've just been brilliant." And look at them and just thought, yeah, you could. Because you're the parent and they're your child and you love them. Of course you could. And I know it comes from a nice place. It comes from a well-meaning place. It's really hard not to sort of, "Oh, for God's sake," you know. But again, it sort of, it takes away from the reality, which is, I'm not superhuman, I'm just a person, doing the best I can, falling apart at the seams on a regular basis. And it's hard. And if you sort of have that attitude of, "Oh, well, you're special, you're better than anyone else," it kind of makes it like, "Oh, it's probably easier for you, because you're a really good parent," or it's a subtle thing, I know. And again, these comments come from a good place, but they often have leave a bad taste, you know. Massive disruption to life, endless appointments for all the spoken. You all understand that well enough. Goes along with the paperwork and the fighting for battles and benefits. This is a very common one. Family unwilling to follow a programme or treatment, and anyone who's worked with families will recognise that one. So you've got Granny who doesn't understand why Johnny can't have a biscuit when she just gives it to him. She wants to give it to him. Or, you know, well, why does he have to be told this in a certain way? You know, oh, it's just me, it doesn't matter. Trying to maintain consistency when you've got a saboteur in the family. And they don't mean it again, it's all in the best will, but very difficult. And that doesn't change, it doesn't get any better as they grow up either. In fact, I think some way it gets harder. Public ridicule, blame, shame and advice is one most parents with children with disabilities will have faced. We are all guilty of judging other people's parenting skills. I can definitely put my hand up to that. We've all done it in Sainsbury's. Looked at someone and thought, oh, do something about your child. But when you are trying to deal with the things that you're dealing with a child with special needs, already having a complete stranger judge you in Sainsbury's, always happens in Sainsbury's. Grocery stores, they bring out the worst in people. I had someone come up to me, I was pushing my son in a trolley, going about my business, doing my shopping, my son was behaving himself, and this man came up to me and just said, basically, that I should be ashamed of myself because my son was in nappies. And I was so shocked, I was so stunned, I couldn't actually say anything. And of course afterwards I was just, oh, you should have said this, you should have said that, she got really angry about it. But I was so stunned that a complete stranger would judge my son and me, know nothing about us. And this is really common, and particularly common I think for people with children with autism or children with challenging behaviour. You've got that, you know, your child's having a major meltdown on the floor, and people are looking at you thinking, God, you're the worst parent in the world, do something about that child. My senior tutor, my son's home programme, used to say it was horrific when he was a tutor and he was out and about with the children because they weren't even his kids. So he was out with a child that didn't belong to him, and they're managing it in the way that the guidelines say, you know, which is, well, put it on extinction, you know, we're just going to stand here until you stop, you know, kicking and screaming. And of course, all the time that's going on, he's dealing with the tutting and huffing and puffing from other people. Not fun. Not fun at all. I had it's a funny thing with staring as well, and I think sometimes it's a cultural thing as well, that some people they don't seem to see a problem with staring at you or your son. And I had the misfortune, again in Sainsbury's, of being with my son, and these two women were brazen about it, just staring at him because he was doing one of his twirly odd things that he was doing. And I had the misfortune of, when I went to the checkout, of being behind them, and I just thought, oh, I picked the wrong lane here. And they turned around and did exactly the same and just stared at him. And eventually I just said, can I help you? Because I just didn't, I was like, do you realise that you're not being subtle here? Didn't seem to be bothered about the fact at all that they were staring. So I'd rather have some, you know, kids, they're funny because they'll just go, why is that child doing that? You know, why are they allowed to? I'd much rather that any day of the week, you know? I'll tell you why. Where do we get to? Yes, denial, unrealistic expectations and false hopes. I haven't had too much problem with this personally myself because I think I'm quite pragmatic, and I tend to err on the side of caution anyway with expectations. But I've had to deal with a lot of parents who have ridiculously strange expectations or unrealistic expectations, and it's so hard because, again, I completely get it. They want their child to be okay, you know, it's hard, and you want to say to them, you know, yeah, I'm sorry, your kid really isn't going to go to college, they're not going to maybe hold down a job, and we need to be looking at what they can do, and they just don't get it. I think for a lot of parents it will come at a certain point, sort of around 10 or 11, which is what it was for me with my son, where you think, okay, this is where he is, this is where his place is going to be, he's in this group here, he's not there, but he's not down here either. But some people never get that, their aspirations are up here and they stay up here, and it's very hard to, you don't want to bring them down, but you have to be honest, you have to be honest. The last couple, again back to pros and cons, people trying to help and people not trying to help. You got that thing of when you're in the middle of trying to manage your child's behaviour or your adult's behaviour, and somebody's going, can I help you? Is there something I can do? And there's part of you that just wants to go, please go away, just go away. But you know again it comes from a good place, people want to be helpful generally, and you don't want to sort of be mean or rude, but there are priorities. And then of course there's a time when you actually do need some help and they don't want to help you, and it's just like, why aren't you helping me? So yeah, it's a kind of a lose-lose scenario, that one. So some possible pitfalls for practitioners. Again, we've covered some of them already. Conflicting opinions amongst family providers and parents' own agenda. And we see a lot of this one, parents' own agenda. So they think they are working in their child's best, and we're talking more adults for this one. They think they're acting in their child's best interests, and they're not. They're acting in their own best interests, they just don't realise it. Coming in as a clinician, you get a clearer picture about really what is actually in that young person's interests. It's a difficult one. But the conflict could actually be in the household itself, within the family. Dad wants to do this, mum wants to do this. You're trying to do PBS, that's a nightmare. Because you need everybody on the same team, on the same side, doing the same thing. Not adapting communication so that everyone can understand. Again, talk at the lowest level in the room. Be careful about the terminology you use. Really difficult, I do it all the time. Completely forget that people don't know, what this acronym means or whatever. These next two know how the systems around the individual work and recognise and analyse the role that other settings play. It's very easy to make a sort of misunderstanding about whether a day service is really important or whether going to stay at Granny's on a Saturday is actually... No, that's, thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, I appreciate it. No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you. Yes, so it might be that you've just got the Saturday trip to Granny's. Well, it's only Saturday, so it's probably not that important. Actually, that might be a really pivotal day of the week for this person. So just think about how these other settings work and how the systems work around the person. Overstepping professional boundaries and going beyond the role limits. This one, actually, from a professional point of view, I really struggle with myself because when you obviously got a bit of empathy for the person, it's very hard not to overstep. But as a parent, I will tell you, it doesn't help. It doesn't help if you overstep. You need people to stay in their boxes to a certain extent. You need people to stay professional. What you can do is be a source of who you can speak to, who a family can go to, know what other resources are around so that you can actually refer to that parent rather than be everything to that parent. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one to balance it right. You want to be supportive, but you don't want to be their go-to person for every problem. And particularly with the home programs, when they're in your house all the time, there's a real tendency to get too close to the people you work with. Very, very hard. So parenting, parents' distrust of practitioners who do not have children or who are young, see this a lot, and practitioners know nothing about parenting. And that's not necessarily the fault because they're not parents, but do a bit of research about it, have a little understanding, talk to people about the problems around parenting. But yes, it's very easy, certainly as a parent, to sort of look at someone and say, like, you look like you're about 12, what are you going to tell me? So yeah, be prepared for that one. On the other side, when the parent is very involved, you've got the parent who expects you to fix their child. And they're the sort of, I'll leave you to it parent. And it's quite easy to sort of judge that parent as, not being involved enough with what's going on with the child. But again, I'd urge you to think back to, is it because they've actually just reached the point of sheer exhaustion and they just can't do it anymore? They're just, you're the lifebelt. It's really difficult. You have to find a way to get them involved, get them part of the process. Some of the best ways of doing that is with the programs that you focus on. So, for example, if you've got a family who are very into health and fitness and activities, they are going to be more on board with a program that relates to that. If you've got the couch potato family, then they're more likely to be on board with the iPad program that you introduce for your child. So it's just thinking about things like that, really. Of course, the child, the young person, is at the centre, but in order to work in their best interest, sometimes you have to kind of go around the houses a little bit. So we talked about parents with unrealistic expectations, and this last two, this one is, to me, these are quite important because, and I see it a lot in my current practice today, which is that ideas come from sometimes the oddest places or the most unexpected places, and we never know everything. We never know a fraction of anything. So work as part of the team. If you've got a problem with somebody has got a particular issue, you want to put some intervention in place for that person, talk to everybody you know about it. Just say, have you worked with this? What did you do? What worked for you? It doesn't have to be people involved in PBS, it doesn't have to be other practitioners, just other parents even. Ideas come from very strange places sometimes. Specific issues working with adults. These first two, very, 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 very relevant. And anyone who works with children at the moment or in a child setting, I would say a focus on this particular area would be really good. Schools don't know enough, and authorities don't know enough to prepare parents for what happens when their child turns 18. There's no question about it. I see it all the time myself. I consider myself lucky because I work in social care, and I know these things as a parent, but they're hard for me. It's hard for me to know that my rights are not the same when my child hits his 18th birthday as the day before when they were 17. Extremely difficult. Parents are used to, particularly very involved parents, they are used to making all the decisions. They're used to having their word as that's how it is. And come 18, 19, 20, that's not how it is, and that's not how it should be. Very, very difficult. But they need to be better prepared for it. They need to understand what legally changes. What can they do about it? Do they know about cause of protection? Do they know about deputyship, things like that? Do they know about the Mental Capacity Act? Do they really understand what that means? Because their expectation of providers and practitioners is going to be different. They don't know about these things. Using resources, interventions or approaches for children. Sometimes you can, and it's fine. It's quite hard to find adult-related resources sometimes to work with people. But there is that danger of, I did this with my 6-year-old and it was really brilliant and it was really effective, and then you want to introduce it to a 20-year-old. It's like, really think about that, make sure it is appropriate. Changes in the weekly routines. Obviously when your child is growing up, when you're doing the home programme, when you're doing school, whatever, you have a very sort of clear routine. Your days are not, you have Monday to Friday, you go to school, you have the weekends, and that's how it works. When that stops, or when you're going to part-time college, or you're going to a day service, or you don't have anything, you've got that kind of fluid thing happening again. And that can make things really difficult to introduce. So you're trying to introduce an intervention. How do you do that when you've not got that routine around? It can be much harder. Inconsistency, everyone's favourite. Dependency on different people with different training doing different jobs. So again, it's finding that common thing that everyone's going to understand, how it relates to everyone, how it's going to work. This one is a general one for everybody really, and we see it again a lot, is the focus being on what the individual can't do. I've worked with a lot of people with quite severe disabilities who could do amazing things, but no one was focused on that because they were too busy going, well, there's a challenging behaviour we've got to sort out, or he can't put his trousers on, or whatever it is, and they've forgotten about the fact that he could do this, and that was really good. And belief that someone is too old or set in their ways to benefit from PBS. You're never too old. You're never too set in your ways. You just might need to approach things slightly differently. Yes, it is easy to introduce when your child is 3. Of course it is. You can make them sit in the chair for a start and do the programme. It's a bit harder when you've got a 20-stone, 25-year-old. But you're not too old. It's like saying people are too old to learn. They just aren't. Top tips. We're nearly done. I promise. Let's get a bit muggy in here. So just a few reminders. Consider your language. Avoid jargon and unnecessary terminology. Collaboration, communication, consistency. I think it's what we all aspire to, and we all know how hard it is to get that. Really, really difficult. You just have to keep trying. Use multidisciplinary teams where possible to support you. If you are not making your case well, try somebody else going around the back door a little bit. Someone else coming with a slightly different approach, a slightly different way, rephrasing it. Sometimes someone else might be able to sell it better than you. Differentiation of delivery across age groups, personalities and settings. So be adaptable. And identify strengths and weaknesses within the environment and the family. So that's going back to sort of the iPad or the cycling programme, Work with that. This one's a tough one, except when something's not deliverable, no matter how good. So it's picking your battles. So you can have the best program in the world, but if you can't actually put it into play, no good. Be a source of support without overstepping professional boundaries. Problem solving, be conscious of what the family is and has been dealing with. Have patience, compassion, understanding, be honest. And that can be really difficult when you're dealing with the most hideous parents going. And I say that as someone who is a hideous parent on occasion and who has dealt with hideous parents. We all have our moments. You have to do the best you can. But be honest with them, be patient with them. This is the last one. And it's one that I have to remind my staff all the time. I had a team meeting with my staff this week. We've had a particularly difficult month, a lot of issues. We sat down at a team meeting. One of the things on the agenda is what goes well and what doesn't go well. We hit the what goes well, and I kind of looked at them and I could see their faces looking at me like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And like, we're not moving on to the next one until you can think of at least one thing that has gone well since the last team meeting, because there is going to be one. And eventually, they came up with 6. And funny enough, one of them was, they said, service user went on a bus. What? They went on a bus? Like, what do you mean they went on a bus? We took them out on the bus. This person's never been out on a bus with us. And she's like, are you kidding me? You didn't tell me that you and you did this thing and it was successful and she had a great time and you got back and no one died and that's amazing. How is that not good? And they were like, oh, yeah, actually, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? You forget. You get into this way of thinking of, focusing always on, oh my God, this happened and that happened. Yeah, but you know what? She went on a bus. Wow, amazing. And celebrate it with everybody. So don't keep it to yourself. If something good happens, ring somebody up. Particularly if it's another practitioner or it's another family or whatever, you ring them up, you tell them, they'll get it. They'll understand it, they'll share it with you. Even if they don't know who you're talking about or anything about the programme. Really, really important. I've been through pages and pages with you of all the hideous things about home programmes and children and and everything, how terrible it is being a parent. But when it comes down to it, that's what you're talking about. That's what you're celebrating, and they do come along. Thank you very much for being so attentive. I know I've talked your ears off. I will be very happy to answer any questions, or if anyone wants to say anything, please. I will just stop talking.
Yes.
Does anyone have anything they want to? I would be around a little bit longer. I knew you would. Yes.
Firstly, well done, Adele. That's brilliant. I'm sure I'll speak for everyone here. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And very brilliant. Just about in terms of I guess, given your knowledge of the other side of things, what are your probably hopes and expectations for Connor's future?
That's a really good question. My hopes are the same as any other parent, which is that my child grows up and has a good quality of life. That's it in a nutshell. How that looks, he will need support 24/7 for the rest of his life because of the needs that he has. So my hopes would be that he will end up in supported living, small supported living because he doesn't like a lot of noise, with another peer who's of similar age and need to him, with a nice support team around him to look after him. That's what I hope for him. I had a meeting with a social worker a little while ago, and she was saying, so where are you at? And I said, well, he's 21 now. I strongly believe that you need to be thinking about moving young person out when you are still fit and able to support them to do it. I've seen too many 40, 50-year-olds living with widowed mum, and it's not good. So I don't want to be one of those parents. I want to be the parent who supports their kid. And so I said, yeah. So she said, well, what sort of time scale are you looking at? Well, I was like, well, before he's 25, which is okay. So when I come back in a couple of years, then we'll be talking about supported living. When I was like, oh. So yeah, yes, before he's 25, I would like to see him settled in a good quality supported living. So that would be my dream. Yes.
Sorry, I'm speaking as a parent. Firstly, absolutely fantastic. Second,
thank you. David.
I should know your name, David. Sorry, saying what David said, absolutely brilliant. And that's coming from a parent here.
Oh, thank you.
I thought that was fabulous. Every single point you've raised, I totally agree with. And just very quickly, for the benefit of the room, that if you took out the fact my son's older, that I didn't do an ABA home programme, obviously. I'm still married, I'm lucky. And I haven't achieved the academic achievements you've done. I could actually stand there now and read that out, and you've just read my life. And to be honest, I'm not just speaking for me, I know so many people over the last 28 years of my son's life who could stand there, and you've just described, I don't want people thinking that's a one-off, as we all know. I could actually pinch that, and read that, and you've just, every single point on there is my son's life. And I just think it's absolutely invaluable that every single support worker, staff member, professional has that as part of their training, as well as doing everything else, because without that you cannot A, see where they're coming from, but fully support the people you are also supporting. You need us on board. And can I just say very quickly on the positive, saying about supported living, my son is in supported living, and exactly what you've just described he's got. So there is hope out there, and he's
really
been there for 8
pleased to
years, and what he's achieving now, I never thought years ago he would ever get to where he is now. So what you've described is possible, and I would have stood and said no it wasn't, and it is. Supported living, small home, peer grouping, staff who do positive behaviour support, and he's got a happy, fulfilled touch with the moment.